So thank you, Mats, and thanks everybody for being here today. I will just give you a very brief overview about general mind-wandering research and how mind-wandering can be linked to visual mental imagery. So I will start, let's start directly with a definition of mind-wandering. So what is it, mind-wandering? It can be described as a shift of our attention away from an ongoing task or events from the perceptual environment to self-generated and internally oriented thoughts or images. And it is a ubiquitous phenomenon, actually very frequent phenomenon. It can occur up to 50% of our waking time. So that's actually a huge amount of time, and you can easily understand why it's so important to investigate the impact that mind-wandering has on our everyday life and on a wide range of different phenomena like emotion, decision-making, or well-being. Mind-wandering can be seen as an umbrella term which can refer to a wide variety of different processes. For example, can include vivid mental images or daydreams or like fantasies, as well as recollecting memory from the past, so episodic memory, as well as future planning, or also reflecting on personal goals or personal concerns. And the psychological literature so far has used different terms to refer to this type of mental phenomena. And here I have highlighted some of the most used ones. So for example, we have task-unrelated or stimulus-independent thoughts that are termed and can capture very well the independence of these experiences from perception. While terms like mind pops, underscore better like the generative process that provide the content of this, the qualitative content of mind-wandering experiences. And then we also have terms like self-generated thoughts that probably you have found it in the literature quite often, that can capture both aspects, so both the generative and the independence from the perceptual experience. So let's talk, we'll give you just a few words about the phenomenology of mind-wandering. So the content of these self-generated thoughts or images can vary along different phenomenological dimensions. And here you can see an example of these categories or dimension of thoughts that we can use to investigate or to categorize this type of mental experiences. This is taken from a study from Andrews Anna, published in 2013 on Frontiers in Psychology. And you can see some examples. So mind-wandering episodes can vary in their self-relevance as well as in their valence, so they can be more or less positive. They can vary as well in the emotionality, in their emotional intensity, or in their temporal orientation, so whether they're focused on the past or on the present or the future. And so this is regarding the content of the thoughts. What about the form? So mind-wandering can occur both in the forms of visual mental images as well as in the form of words, like a sort of inner dialogue or inner speech. And here it comes the links with visual mental imagery. So the link with visual mental imagery. So visual mental imagery can be seen as part of the broader family of mind-wandering, so as one modality that mind-wandering can take. However, this is also something that has really not been addressed or has been discussed in the literature, so it's something that really needs to be further developed, and perhaps this is also the place, the right place to do it. And Mind wandering in general is considered as a spontaneous phenomenon. However, it's important to say that there is always a certain extent or a certain degree of intentionality that we can apply to this type of thoughts. And this level of intentionality is helpful in distinguishing between spontaneous and deliberate type of mind wandering. So a few words about the neural correlates of mind wandering. So mind wandering principal but not exclusive neural contributor is the so-called default mode network, or DMN. And this was consistently shown by a large number of fMRI studies and also meta-analysis of mind wandering. And the default mode network is like a large set of brain regions that encompasses mostly the medial surface of the brain, so the medial prefrontal cortex and parietal cortex, as you see in these images in the bottom. The DMN is highlighted in green and blue. But also it covers some more lateral aspects of the temporal and parietal cortex. Oops, sorry again. Okay. And the default mode network is typically shown to be active when a person is in a sort of wakeful, in a state of wakeful rest, so such as during mind wandering. And it's called default because it basically activates by default when a person is not engaged in a task that require external or focused attention. And this is also why initially it was named task negative network. However, this term is not really fully appropriate because since the default mode network can be engaged also during some tasks that require, for example, autobiographical memory or social cognition processes, which, as I mentioned earlier, can be seen as processes that are under the broader field of mind wandering. What is interesting is that also the default mode network typically anticorrelates with other brain regions that are involved in external or focused attention that you see in this figure are highlighted in yellow and red. So it's like, so you can see, you can understand how our brain in a way shifts between two different modes of information processing or modes of attention. One that is internally oriented or internally focused, and this is represented by the default mode network activity, and one that is more externally projected. So a few words about the methodology. So mind wandering episodes are fundamentally internal and subjective. So this creates a challenge when we want to measure this type of mental phenomena. And so the most common method used so far by mind wandering research has been experience sampling, which is a methodology for assessing ongoing thoughts in which participants are like periodically asked about what they're currently thinking about. So, for example, they perform a task and then a probe would ask them what you're thinking about. However, experience sampling is based on self-report, which can be biased by memory and are introspective measures. So it's important to corroborate self-reports of mind wandering with other more objective or indirect indices of mind wandering. For example, you can use response times, which are very useful because you can detect mind wandering without really interrupting participants while they're performing a task. And concerning more objective measure, mind wandering has been associated also with divergent eye movement, greater pupil dilatation, and also change in the EEG signal. And as I mentioned earlier, the main neural correlates that has been identified so far is the default mode network. Concerning emotion, so emotion is a primary factor that can really shape our mind wandering episode or mind wandering experiences. So it was shown that when people are less happy when they are mind wandering compared to when they are not. And however, it's important to say that mind wandering is not inherently a detrimental phenomenon, because it's very important to understand that the content, so people's thoughts can play a very important role in shaping the effects of mind wandering, for example, and can really modulate this association between mind wandering and negative affect. So, for instance, it was shown that thoughts that are focused on the past are linked to higher unhappiness. And if you think about the relationship between depression and a specific type of mind wandering, which is called rumination, which is a type of mind wandering that is kind of circular or repetitive on specific thoughts that are focused on the past and that are negatively colored, let's say. However, it was also demonstrated that thoughts that instead are focused on the future or can be rated as interesting, these instead can lead to an increase in the subsequent mood after the mind-wandering episodes. So it's important to understand that really thought content can play an important role in shaping the effects that mind-wandering can have, especially on mood. And mind-wandering research has also shown that mind-wandering involves a complex balance between costs and benefits. So as I just mentioned, an example of a cost can be a decrease in the subsequent mood after the mind-wandering episode, or for example, errors during performance of a task. Examples of benefits instead can be enhance creativity or enhance future planning. And in in determining whether mind wandering can have a beneficial or detrimental outcome, it's very important to consider these factors that are mentioned here. So the content of the thoughts, as I just mentioned, but also the individual characteristic of the mind wanderer, so in terms of personality, for example, but also the context, the task context in which mind wandering occur. And in this sense, music could be potentially used as a vehicle or as a tool to stimulate beneficial styles of mind wandering. So it could be really be used as a possibility to investigate how mind wandering and also visual mental imagery can turn into adaptive experiences, and especially because of the power of music to evoke pleasurable emotion, which could in turn be used to regulate the content of our thoughts. And probably this is also something that we will be discussing here during the next days. So thank you very much.